So I have the iPhone 15 Pro, and one of the differences when I got this phone compared to my other previous devices is that it has the dynamic island, and it's one of the features that Apple is marketing the iPhone 15 Pro with since it was introduced the year before. And I gotta say that the dynamic island is pretty much useless. And let's go ahead and tell you the reasons why. So the big difference between the dynamic island and the previous iPhones that use the notch is that it is pretty much like a little pill, kind of like a little island that sits on the top, and it kind of expands and makes little animations when you're doing certain actions on the iPhone, and basically is just a distraction from keeping you focused that there is a black spot on the iPhone screen. There is really no reason that this that this dynamic island makes the experience better. It is just a way for Apple to hide the notch. The notch on previous iPhones was there and it was obvious, but it was a huge improvement over having a thick bezel on top and on the bottom. Apple was trying to make a full screen device, but it had to have some space for the camera and some sensors until the day that we get under the display sensors. This is the best that we've gotten. And Apple kind of knows this, that there's no real way to hide the notch. And this is the dynamic island was actually trying to scam us, trying to say that this is a benefit. And look at this feature. No, it is not. It is just a very marketing type of way to hide the notch and make it seem like it's a feature. The main purpose of the dynamic island is basically it's used as a way to provide a visual indication that you are handling a newer model iPhone. So the dynamic island was first introduced on the iPhone 14 Pro, and right with the next model, the iPhone 15, it went from a Pro only feature to now having the iPhone 15, the baseline model, and also the iPhone 15 Pro. So within 1 year, that feature went from Pro to pretty much all the newer iPhones that follow. Doesn't have to be Pro. And that says a lot. It's basically how Apple knows that the iPhone really can't change visually or hardware from a hardware standpoint that much. But they need a way to let people know that yes, this one stands out from the older iPhones. If you have this pill or this dynamic island, you have one of the newer devices. So in a nutshell, that's what Apple's main objective is to this, is just kind of a visual indication that you have the newer models. So since this is a software feature, it's supposed to do a lot, but it really doesn't provide you that much more value as a whole. There's not much going on in the dynamic island besides giving you some nifty in and out transitions. And for the most part, you can only get information on the sides when it's closed, and when it expands, it kind of just takes up more screen. And this is something that could easily be done on any other iPhone from, the 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever. But you're not getting any much more value. Most of the times that I interact with the dynamic island, it kind of I end up opening up the full app anyways. There's no real reason to pay a premium to get a newer iPhone to get the dynamic island. It doesn't really, provide that much value. You're not getting any much more information. Once in a while I put on a sports score, but I mean, it shows a few numbers, and it just makes you kind of just look at your home screen a lot more, or it kind of makes you focus on those little things. You're only going to get a couple of features, a little. They're like a smaller version of a widget. They give you the super bare bones of it, and I don't think that's worthy of upgrading to a newer iPhone. So the reason that this dynamic island is just not worth it, in a nutshell, is it just makes you want to just get a older iPhone at a much lower price. Instead of getting the iPhone 14 Pro or the regular iPhone 15, since there's not much value and that much difference in this little software change, you might as well just get an iPhone 11 or a 12 and pay a lot less, because the dynamic island is not a feature. It is just, how can I say it? It's like slapping a makeup on a pig. They're just trying to hide the fact that there's still a notch there, and they kind of just made it a little bit smaller and a little bit more circly. And it's a feature, but it's not. It's really just another way to distract you from this, black space on the top. By Apple introducing the dynamic island, Apple is showing that they're really running out of ideas with this yearly cycle of introducing new iPhones. Usually, you have to show something that makes it different from the previous model. In the iPhone 15 case, it went from the Pro, they brought it down to the base model iPhone. But other than that, there's no real difference visually. It's all pretty much in the software. And Apple is just limited. They know they cannot. They've already pushed the limits of what you could do with the iPhone's hardware. You cannot make this phone that much better hardware wise. And this is like just a little visual indication. There's not much room to play with. They kind of do not have any other thing to show, hardware wise, what they could do with the iPhone update. So yeah, unless they get that to that point where they could have an under the display, where it's all 100% screen, there's no real reason that the dynamic island should exist, because it doesn't provide any tactical or any real physical way of, this is an improvement, this is a feature of the iPhone. It's just a visual indication that Apple has run out of ideas for the hardware, and they're just putting makeup on a pig. That's about it. So if I were you, I'd skip the dynamic island entirely and just save your money and get an older iPhone at a much discounted price. Thank you, guys.